All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're based. Thanks so much for joining today's webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about circular economy and resource management with Mark Turner from Action Sustainability. Thrilled to have Mark on the call. My name is Wendy Carradine. I'm the operations manager for the US Supply Chain Sustainability School. If you haven't been on one of our sessions before, nice to meet you. Glad that you're here. If you have been on one of these sessions before, you probably know the drill, but I'm going to go through a couple of housekeeping items before we make a start. So just really quickly, today's session is going to be about an hour. The session is being recorded, and the recording and the slides will be shared. If you have attended today's session, you'll receive an email from me either this afternoon or tomorrow with a link to the slides and the recording and a couple of other handy resources that I think you might find useful. You'll also receive a certificate of completion that'll pop up automatically in your dashboard. If you do have any issues accessing that certificate, please do email me, get in touch with me, and I'll be able to help you. If you do have any technical problems throughout this call, just drop a note in the chat or email me. My details were sent to you prior to this webinar. And again, I should be able to provide support. There is also a survey that will be circulated both after this webinar is closed and in the email that goes out after the session. If you could take 30 seconds to answer a couple of questions, it really helps us out. Please do submit that survey if you have a spare moment. I think that is all of my Q&A and chat are live. So if you do have any questions, I would very much encourage you to drop them into the chat or the QA function. If you do want to pop something in the chat, just say hello, where you're joining from. If you have any interesting plans for the weekend, whatever you feel like putting in there, would love to hear from you. I am going to adjust. We are a small group today, so I am going to try to adjust the settings. So if you do have a question, we might open it up to the floor. But feel free to leave yourself on mute and your camera off if that is what you're comfortable with. All of that said, I'm going to hand it over to Mark, and he's going to run today's session. So take it away, Mark.
So thanks, Wendy. Yeah. So good morning, all. It's the sun is setting over here near Liverpool. You'll be pleased to hear, but hopefully not for the last time. So this is me. I look after a few things for the UK version of the school. So I look after our facilities management and property leadership group. We've got a group that focuses around the area of nature recovery, and that's become a really big. Increasingly important area, actually, and a lot of interaction, I think, with the waste and circularity side of things, where nature and our resource use collide. But more pertinently to our webinar today, I lead on our work on waste and resource use, and that has a very heavy emphasis around circularity, as I sort of touched on earlier. So I'm hoping that by the end of this short hour, you'll have. And if you're new to this topic, which some of you may be a bit further down the line, and apologies to you because I will start from the bottom up. But wherever you start in terms of the circular economy and resource management, I'll try and build that up from the ground, so you'll have an improved understanding of how that works, what it means, and the drivers that influence it. We have a great habit in sustainability of making things sound a bit more complicated than they should be sometimes. So I'll try and unravel a bit of that for you. But if anything is perplexing you, or you think I'm not making sense, that is quite possible, by the way, please interrupt me. Please put a question in the chat, or please just shout up or stick your hand up, or whatever you want to do. We're a smallish group. You will not upset me at all by interrupting me. In fact, I very much welcome it, because we've got a slightly croaky voice today, as you may hear. Moving on with our agenda, you'll have considered circularity and effective resource management in the context of your own organisational and operational standards and requirements, and we'll touch on some of that and where it sits. We'll have a little look at how you can maybe consider opportunities to introduce more circular ways of working within your own organisation, and in particular, of course, in that client relationship management side of things. So working with your client, we're also working with your supply chain, because often your supply chain may be the people that bring forward the great ideas that can be tried out, and that's one of the best ways to get this stuff going, to work closely with your supply chain. So that's a kind of a two-way street, as I'm sure you well know. And the last one I always put down, but I think it's quite important, and that's just that you can sort of better explain the challenges and the opportunities from the circular economy and from being more resource efficient to your customers and your colleagues in the supply chain. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a habit of making things a bit more complicated than they need to be sometimes in sustainability. So it's nice to be able to sort of do that in words of one syllable and just explain what it means and how it might work for people. So I hope that agenda works for you. Wendy's already covered this off, but I don't think we've got the cameras on, but I think the mics might be on. Wendy's certainly trying to make that happen. And if not, just use the chat function. You can see it there. Put your questions in there. I'll monitor that intermittently, reply. We're going to use that anyway for a few sort of questions I'm going to ask you just to keep things involved. So please join in, because it's a very lonely task when you're just doing it for an hour on your own. So if you can join in with those tasks, I'd very much appreciate it. You're going to get all of the content afterwards, so you don't need to be writing too much down or anything down, in fact, and you even get a recording so you can follow through afterwards. And you will get a feedback link, and we're very interested in the feedback because it's still quite early days doing this stuff across your side of the pond. So we want to be making sure that we get it as right as possible. And anything you can tell us, any constructive criticism or a little bit of praise, whatever, we don't mind. But just let us know what you think, and we will attempt to improve. Okay, so. I'm sure you know this already, but the school was kind of set up with these two kind of core objectives in mind. It is a supply chain sustainability school, so a big focus in the school is about thinking about the built environment supply chain and assessing the knowledge and competence that's out there, but then developing that, so improving that. And why would we do that? Well, when it comes to all issues around sustainability and environment and the socio-economic issues around sustainability, the supply chain can offer clearly some of the risk where things might go wrong. But I always think, far more importantly, really, it offers a way to find solutions, to find innovation, to make things work, and to kind of dig out that knowledge and put it into action through that supply chain partner management. So it's a real key thing. We've all got customers wherever we sit, so that's very important. So we're offering the same kind of service up the way to our customers as your suppliers are up the way to you. Let's make the most of that. And everything on the school is free. You get the continuous professional development side of things, and it's confidential when you're kind of doing your resource work on the school. So we're all in it together. This is where waste and circular economy kind of sits in the big wheel of sustainability issues. Like I said, it's gone complicated. We've gone past that fairly quickly, but I just wanted to then share with you this, which is a helpful way of thinking about how the circular economy, which I promise you I will explain in quite a lot of depth, but let's call it resource efficiency for now, where resource efficiency and effective resource management and waste management and so on sits within the built environment. And if we look at our kind of diagram here, if we go right the way across to the left and think about the client, this is a great time at which to get involved. So if you have any linked client, or you are indeed the client yourself in some cases, you've got the best opportunity of all, really, because you're the earliest person or organisation involved in the process. And as we well know, it doesn't matter what you do, the earlier you get involved in it, the more chance of it being successful. And at that area where we kind of work between the client and the designer, we can think about things like designing out waste right from the start of the project, our procurement processes, design for manufacture and assembly, where we design things off-site and then bring them to site and put them together in that modular way. Fits with the off-site manufacturing world, which is really starting to sort of grow now. It's pretty unsteady. It's pretty unsteady our side of the water too, but we're seeing more and more off-site solutions being brought into play. And then you've got the kind of the whole area around lean. So one person's lean is another person's sustainable, because you're going to be using less, you're going to be more efficient. Whether that be time, whether that be carbon, whether that be fuel, whether that be materials, it doesn't matter. And also this issue about considering the whole lifetime of the building or built environment we're operating in. That's really important, because we've fallen into a bit of a habit, and this will come up in circularity, of doing things in a bit of a one-off linear way. Whereas actually what we need to be thinking about is the number of lifetimes a building goes through, or a factory goes through, or a school, or a hospital, or whatever it is that happens to be out there. It changes in so many ways through time, through the decades. We don't put these things up for 5 minutes. You think about road, you think about rail, it's the same kind of approach, or anything that's actually built. So we need to be thinking about how we can fix things, how we can maintain things, and that's really, really key. Right, spend a bit of time on that. If we move to the centre, then we get kind of the bones of how things actually get built. So we have our contractor, and our contractor nowadays is often not an organisation that does the direct building process themselves. They will frequently, and almost more frequently than not, use an expert array of subcontractors and suppliers who bring their expertise to the table and make things happen. And that's where we can start thinking about procurement of materials. We can think about the behaviours around waste minimisation, segregation, better resource productivity, but also bringing those great ideas to the table. Now, the third-party merchants who supply materials are important there as well, because not all materials are delivered direct. So how can we make that process more efficient? How can we iron out things like packaging, that kind of thing? And then we move across to the facilities management side of things and the operation of the existing built environment. And clearly that's a whole extra world of opportunity to be more resource efficient, to do things in a way that maintains the building that we have, maintains the resources that we have, minimises the use of those expensive and occasionally potentially environmentally damaging resources, making sure that we segregate waste, making sure that we maintain and fix and improve, that we go in and restore, make sure that we go in and get involved in retrofit rather than just knocking a whole building down and starting again. Can we actually have a constant process of maintenance? All good for circularity. And then, of course, when we get to the beginning and the end of things, which is the preparation of a site before build, or the demolition that may go on, or the deconstruction of something that has gone past its useful lifetime, there are so many opportunities there too. So there is so much just in this one picture here to kind of work off when you start thinking about being more resource efficient and circular. And I just put this up as kind of a little bit of a map of some of the things that you can get involved in. This is actually what we use in our UK group as a sort of imagine when you go to the cafe or the restaurant, you got the long menu, you got the short menu of the day's specials, and then you got the long menu of anything that's possible. So this contains a lot of the longer list of possibilities. So this issue about thinking about whole project life cycle, designing out waste at the start, zero avoidable waste to landfill, supporting our procurement processes, because procurement is a real Cinderella when it comes to resource efficiency and circularity. If you build into the process, working with supply chain, those resource efficient processes, they are more likely to stick. And if you've got a listening head on in terms of procurement, then you're more likely to find the good ideas and put them into action in your projects. We do a lot of work around data, because increasingly, we're getting insane amounts of data now, aren't we? We've now got AI, which is just, multiply compounding the issue. In some cases, the problem, because we're getting too much data and not quite knowing what to do with it. So we need to kind of harness and corral that data and make the best use of the data. So we get the data that we need, so we understand our baselines, and then we can improve. We look at plastics, we look at packaging. These are big areas, and these are great areas for opportunity when you're starting out in something like circularity or resource efficiency, because you can generally, wherever you go, see a bit of packaging that wasn't really needed. And I'm sure anybody who's had that Amazon delivery, or in the massive box with the tiny products inside it, has had that same thought. So we need to take those thoughts to work and think about how we can do things differently. All of this is linked to the zero net carbon issue, of course, net zero pathways. And we've got to think about the ground below us. We've got to think about the soils, the aggregates, the demolition and excavation waste that we produce. There is so much to go at. It can be challenging knowing where to start. it's quite possible to get on with it. So let's just reel back a little minute and talk about, let's come at this from a waste perspective just for a while. So if we ask ourselves, what is waste? Who cares? Well, here's the EPA's definition, quite a long definition, but you can see words there like garbage, refuse, sludge. These are not words that give you a kind of strong feeling that we've got a positive material here. We are genuinely talking about something that's a nuisance, that's not wanted, that's a pain. And there's a kind of illustration on the right hand side of a landfill site showing just the kind of how this can kind of play out in action. If you come to our side of the water, and many of you may have operations elsewhere than in the US and Canada, so you're looking at elsewhere around the world. In the EU, we have the EU Waste Framework Directive, which also forms the core for what we use our side in the UK, and it's shorter, but it's still it feels a bit negative. It says any substance or object the holder discards or intends to or is required to discard. And we get that double use of that word discard, suggests something of no value. Now, what I would argue is that, are we talking about waste? I would prefer to say we're most likely, and in most cases, talking about valuable resources, in some cases non-renewable resources, or in many cases non-renewable resources, but resources that by one way or another ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time, so they become a waste. Because we know that when we work in the built environment, the program is king. The program is key. So you'll have the budget and you'll have the program, and you do not want to fall out with that program. So time is a massive factor once you get on site, and that can cause corners to be cut and waste to be generated that wouldn't otherwise be generated if we had a bit more time to think about it. So hold that thought, because that'll come in quite useful. So let's move swiftly now to the circular economy. So the circular economy, here's a definition. It's not the only definition. There are a few. So I'm sharing one with you here. I'll probably share a couple more. But it talks about the circular economy being an alternative to our traditional linear economy, which we've fallen into. I mentioned that before. We fell into that years and years and years ago, sort of post-war, really, I would say, when austerity sort of was coming to an end and you never had it so good and all of that. And, we were on the boom, materials were cheap. You could go anywhere in the world and get materials. You could find cheap labor. And we moved to that linear system where we would make things, we would use them, and just chuck them away because they were cheap to buy, they were cheap to source, and why would we worry about it? There's always plenty more material, there's always plenty more labour to build it. We've got money in our pockets, let's go and buy it. So that is what would happen. So that is the linear economy. So unpicking the definition a bit further, it talks about the circular economy being one in which we keep resources in use for as long as possible. So you're looking for that maximum longevity. You're going to extract the maximum value from them while in use. That's important too, because the circular economy is very much a value proposition. It's about value as much as anything else. And then we're going to recover and regenerate products and materials at the end of each service life of whatever it is we're talking about. So whether that product is a mobile phone or a vehicle or a pump or a building, it still is something that we can keep in use for longer if we design it in such a way that it can be kept in use for a while and we can fix it and maintain it and get the best use from it. We don't need to have this single-use process. I see something in the chat already. Let's have a little look.
Got a question about pallet recycling, which I think is really interesting. Thanks for that question, Lizzie. Yeah, if the wider group has any experience in this, I would love to hear from anyone else.
Yeah, and that's a good one because we work quite closely with the Pallet Loop in the UK. So what the Pallet Loop do is the organisation, the customers of the Pallet Loop, they buy a set of pallets, but the Pallet Loop fix and maintain and keep those pallets in in action, in motion, in productive use. Because the stats tell you in England that 9 out of 10 pallets only make a one-way journey. Excuse me while I have a drink. So that's really important. So we need to find more ways, and we know that in kind of the retail world, we're better at that than in the built environments. Can we improve? Okay, let's move on. I'm going to take a tablet. There we go. So our circular economy, you can see at the bottom, and our linear economy at the top. I'll leave that on the screen for a minute while you look at it. Okay. So what you see is that in a linear economy, we have our raw materials. They're designed into components, manufactured into products, consumed, and then thrown away. Not a great use of materials, because it's a one-way ticket to the dump, and obviously all the value is lost through that process. And it might have been a cheaper process in the first place, but in the long term, it's going to be more expensive. In a circular economy, we think about the material that we're going to use. So we're going to be thinking about our raw materials. Can we use recycled content? If we can't use wholly recycled content, can we use partially recycled content? Can we, above all, use very durable content that's going to be fit for purpose? It's going to stand the test of time. We're going to design those raw materials into the products. We're going to put those into the components, rather. They're going to go into the manufacturing process, into products that we then consume. And in a circular economy, it doesn't stop there. They don't get consumed and then disposed of. They get consumed, but then they've been designed in such a way that they can be maintained. They can be fixed while they're in situ. There's a reuse and a refurbishment aspect. We can reuse and refurbish because we can take out the parts that are no longer working or functional or have been outmoded and replace them with new parts, because we've designed in such a way that we can slot things in and out. And ultimately, after a long lifetime of much maintenance and much reuse and refurbishment, and very, very, above all, very, very high quality maintenance, we can break down our products through a recycling process. Again, whether that product be a vehicle or a mobile phone or a building. So the building has been designed in such a way it's designed for deconstruction, so we can get back the materials for recycling and they can go back into the next cycle. So this is what the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, who produced some absolutely superb content on circular economy, put forward. And they say 3 principles apply. And they're all, this is key, they're all design-driven principles. So the first one is the elimination of waste and pollution. That's pretty clear in what I've spoken about already. The second one is to circulate those products and materials at their highest value. I did say earlier that this is a value kind of driven proposition. So you can see that. So you can see where that comes from. But the third one is one that might surprise you, and that's the regeneration of nature. But why would it surprise us? Because what we know is that we break the systems that look after our basically life on Earth. We're gonna have to fix them somehow, and if we have to fix them by man-made needs, the value and the cost of that is going to be so high that it's going to far outstrip the impact if we regenerated and looked after nature in the first place. So we must respect nature in how we go about extracting resources and making use of resources. And clearly, the more circular we are, the less resources we'll be calling upon pro rata to the demand. Well, unfortunately, we live in a world where demand is fast increasing, and we know all about that. So that is an increasing challenge. But all that does really is accelerate the need to think about how we're going to respect nature, because if we don't look after our environment, we will break systems that we'll then have to put in place, alternative systems that will protect us from the challenges of climate change and anything else that comes along, pollution and so on and so forth. The last bit is quite key here in this sentence, because it talks about a transition to renewable energy and materials and decoupling our economic activity from consuming finite resources. And this is where it all gets a bit wordy, right? But what I would like you to do is just kind of separate yourself from that a little bit and think what we're really talking about is, in the circular economy, it's not just what you do, it's the way that you do it. So, for instance, it's not just the products that you bring to market, but think about the logistics of how you do that. The logistics are just as important. How much energy are you using? How much time? How much else are you putting in? How much resources are being, lost at the factory before it even gets, to the construction site? Can we rethink the problem a little bit? Do we need to buy everything? Can we rent things instead? Can we operate on rental models, and not just on rental models for things like, let's say for pallets, something that we just discussed, or not just rental models for something like vehicles or plant, but could we have a rental model for some of the aspects around us? There's a company called Philips that you may know, and they operate a very successful rental model for light because they're global experts in lighting. And what they do is they provide a system with key performance indicators that they provide all the kit, the client pays for light, and it's to certain standards, and they deliver that. So you can rethink your business model as well. Let's move on. So this diagram from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation unpicks it a bit more. On the left-hand side, you have what they call biological nutrients. So these are the things that can be farmed or grown or fished out of the sea. And, what you see is in a linear economy, if you drop down the center of the diagram, you go from the components or the ingredients, go to a product manufacturer, goes onto the consumer, and then it drops out at the bottom, and the likely fate is going to be either incineration or landfill, and we see a lot of that. But there are opportunities to actually capture material and capture material back. We can compost, we can generate biogas, we can go through anaerobic digestion processes. We can gather fertilizers. There's lots we can gather from those nutrients. And that gets even more complex and interesting for the built environment on the right-hand side, because the stuff that can be mined or quarried, which is the prime stuff that we're going to be using, once it's gone down to the end user, instead of dropping down once it's outlived its usefulness into energy recovery or to landfill, we can maintain it in use. We can reuse and redistribute. So we can reuse things elsewhere around different sites, or we can redistribute. We might redistribute to organizations that can use things that we no longer have a use for. We can refurbish and remanufacture. Stuff can be re-engineered and refitted. And ultimately, we can recycle, but we'll only recycle after we've gone through all those other loops. And that's why circularity can really work. It's kind of a long-term proposition that will deliver better value over time. So, the first thing, do you need it in the first place? Can you fix it? Could you design it better? Could you retain more value in what you have? If you've not got something that you don't need, can somebody else use it? Can a different organization use it? It might be a charitable organization, an organization in the third sector. Can you do that instead of just sticking it in the dumpster? Can you save time and money and be more thoughtful and resource efficient? All things that sound great in principle, but things we kind of moved away from a little bit. So I'm going to try this one on you. I'm not saying it's going to work, but I will give it a go anyway. So being in my 60s, I'm a great lover of 1970s British sitcoms. And these are two of the kind of finest exponents of the art that are no longer PC to have in daytime viewing hours, but still pretty funny, I've got to tell you. So can anybody in the chat tell me who these characters are? Just stick in the chat. I'm really flying a kite here. I'm kind of hopeful that some of you might know. Who are these characters? Oh.
Wendy, I've seen this before and I can't remember.
Wendy, I'm struggling. Yeah. Oh dear, mate. Oh.
We'll give a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Anyone?
Yeah. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh well. You know what? It's the first time for everything. That's the first time nobody's known who these people are. So at the bottom you got Benny Hill. And he had a character called Ernie, the fastest milkman in the West. Now, if you think about it, what could be a more circular business than a milk round, where you have a product that people use? It might not be milk, it might be a different product, but that product is used daily by people. It's delivered in a reusable container That container can be used time after time after time after time. So the packaging is entirely reusable. And guess what? It's delivered on an EV vehicle. Absolutely amazing. And, that kind of stuff happened decades ago. And then we moved away from it. We went back to buying our milk from the supermarket. So we moved away from something. But now we're seeing those kind of models coming back, those models of delivering products in reusable containers or delivering products to people in a way in which they can consume them more easily and consume them with less waste overall. So, notwithstanding the packaging example I mentioned before, there are plenty of opportunities to rethink that model. Now, the top one is a shifty pair of people called Steptoe and Son. They were what they call rag and bone men in London back in the 60s and 70s, and they go around on a horse and cart, and they would collect all the stuff that nobody wanted, all the rubbish, all the throwaway items, but they would find a use for everything that they collected, usually with pretty disastrous results. But the point being, that was a business model. It was very, very effective back then. We've come back towards a little bit, I think, with charity shops, but not as far as we could. So what I'm trying to do is just illustrate that we've been circular before. There's no magic here. All we did was forget about it because it was too easy. So let's try one more that hopefully you can do. Who would care about the circular economy? So what stakeholders or interest groups that, affect your business or affect your personal lives would have an interest in the circular economy and being more resource efficient? Put something in the chat to tell me. Who can you think of? Getting some already. This is good. Yeah, most definitely the end client. So our end clients increasingly interested in this area, but also perhaps need to be educated in this area about the art of the possible, because they all have sustainability reporting of one kind or another. Yeah, exactly, Anna. Yeah, businesses using the end product as inputs. So you're making a more resource efficient process. You start the squeeze right at the beginning and work towards that endpoint. So who else? Who else cares about the circular economy? Who cares about being resource efficient? Yes, very much. Innovators, businesses creating new products. What about the locations where, the states where you operate? What goes on in those states? I know that in America, and we're going to look at some examples soon, it varies a heck of a lot from one location to another. And obviously, we know what's going on nationally. We're not going to talk about that too much. But we know that on a state basis that can change from border to border. So is there anything there for anybody to think about? Do you have legislation? Do you have policy? Do you have requirements? Is it different in California to Texas? That kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. So local communities and stakeholders, because people care about this. We've been having a massive problem in the UK with illegal tipping recently, and it's got massively out of hand to the extent that those who regulate against fly tipping, as we call it, can't control it, and it's become a major problem. So we don't like to see that, do we? We like to think we live in a clean way, but we're seeing that material piling up. Well, it's usable material, by the way, but not in the state where it's ending up. Okay, I'll park that one there, but there are lots and lots of different stakeholders. You've got ourselves, we've got our children, we've got our families, we've got our communities, we've got our businesses, we've got our supply chain, we've got our clients. Increasingly, fly tipping, illegal dumping, thank you. We've got the investment community, because the investment community is beginning to look at KPIs now, key performance indicators around performance on resource management as part of the estimation of the efficiency of a business in which they invest. So these kind of things all count. So I won't go on about it any more than that. If we have a look at who's got the most circular economy, no surprises here. strong Northern European influence. You also see Northern Japan, Germany, France in there. This was Oliver Wyman doing an analysis on the opportunity in the United States on transition. And they just looked at 3 different industrial activities. So EVs, electrical vehicles and battery, the built environment and the electronic equipment sector. And they saw a major opportunity. You can see it's a multi-billion business proposition here to move towards more circularity. And it's becoming important because we've got that geopolitical uncertainty now as well, which is making life harder. So there's a report there that you can have a look at. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so thanks for that, R. Williams. Yeah, residents and communities are affected by climate change. Yeah, we're starting to see that. So here are some of the things going on in the States. And this isn't by any means all of them, but just some of them. So the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, you can see that there, giving the EPA the authority to control hazardous waste from cradle to grave. The Pollution Prevention Act, which you probably know about. But the National Recycling Strategy is interesting as well. So she's thinking about pushing towards increasing a recycling rate to 50% by 2030, rather than that single-use process. California Plastic Pollution Prevention and Packaging Producer Responsibility Act. So that's interesting because that's about producer responsibility. It's effectively like a polluter pays tax. So those who are creating the pollution have to pay to sort out the problem. Those who are creating the packaging have to pay towards making sure that that's properly treated, properly recycled, or in some cases eliminated. A lot of work going on around expanded polystyrene in that area, which, as we know, is a real challenge waste. And you can see others. You've got stuff in Minnesota and Oregon there as well. So it's good. What's interesting at the bottom there is about the right to repair legislation. So this puts a demand on those who manufacture products that they will not just be single-use products, that they're not just single-use, they can't be fixed. So frustrating, I go online for videos when I want to learn how to fix something, and more often than not, the video that I'll watch will either come from India or the United States, and it'll be somebody who's taken the time to put a video up to show you how to, fix an item on your car, or fix an item on your washing machine, or a fix on something that's broken in the house. So we can be good at fixing things, but we have to have the knowledge and they have to be fixable in the first place. This is one of the big kind of circularity frameworks used in the UK. It's called Cradle to Cradle. So this is quite a structured process with levels from bronze through to platinum. It focuses on a whole sort of set of different areas. Circularity is one of the key ones in there. It looks at kind of water and it looks at all sorts of other things. And then we've got an ISO standard for guidance on transitioning to a circular economy. So you can download that ISO standard and it will give you a nice structure around to which to work if you want to use that as well. So I only throw these in because there are things that you can look at further. What's going on else around in the world, because the world is changing, isn't it? So we're seeing that in the Pacific Rim, across in Asia, they're aware of what's happening in Europe, where a lot of their markets lie, and something called CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and they're starting to act on that to be ready and prepared for it. And they will be ready and they will be prepared for it. Then, some of you, many of you, a lot of people I know in the States have, historical and familial connections to Ireland, like the old country. And, Ireland is part of the EU, unlike United Kingdom, which is no longer part of the EU, the European Union. Therefore, it falls under the EU laws. And for a long, long time, Ireland has lagged quite far behind the rest of the EU. The kind of countries like Holland and Belgium and so on, and Germany, who are good at these things in being circular and being resource efficient. So what they've had to do is make some changes because they were far behind. So they introduced a government strategy, which is there, and you can just cast your eye across the reasons why they did that. They're all very logical reasons. Because Ireland wants to be more self-sufficient, apart from anything else. It's got a huge farming economy as well, so there's great opportunities there. And they produce this transition program, and the built environment is a key part of that transition program. So they're really thinking hard into how they can make the best of the materials that they have. And we operate a school in Ireland. It's got some excellent partners in it now, and really doing some great things. It's good to see. So this is some of the stuff they're doing. And you can see construction and demolition, millions of tons of resources they can recover. Green procurement, textiles, plastics, resources, raw materials, agriculture, and food waste. We waste far too much food. Here's one for Chile. So it's going on all around us, in places you might not expect. But Chile have got a fantastic roadmap for circularity, and again, some great goals in there. Create it, and look at their first goal: creation of green jobs. So what is more important to a person than having gainful employment in something worthwhile? Well, the green economy and circularity presents great opportunities for jobs, to keep things running, to keep things in action, to keep things working. But there are other goals too about reducing municipal waste and reducing general recycling, or improving general recycling, and so on. This is just a list of the stuff in the UK. It's pretty scary. We've got all sorts going on. We are highly regulated this side. You will never see, I think, this level of regulation, but it's starting to come together in a semi-coherent form now, I would say. Long way to go. But for instance, in London, just to give you an instance, any building that's built in London that has a value over 5 million, and you don't build a lot for 5 million these days, it has to have a full-on circular economy statement, including full breakdown on how the product or the building itself can be disassembled and reused when it's outlived its usefulness. That's incredible to think about when we think about the lifetime of buildings. These are some of the circular economy and resource efficiency strategies of some kind of key clients this side. Apologies for going for this side a little bit, but I found it quite hard finding some of this stuff in the States. I think you're in much earlier days in some of this work, and that's understandable. But you can see a very long list of clients there, and they're all very serious about this. They're setting KPIs of their organisations that wish to work for them. This all fits to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 12, responsible consumption and production, is bang on. But the circular economy fits for so many of these goals. If we only think about food and we go to no poverty and zero hunger, good health and well-being. If we think about innovation, opportunity for jobs, opportunity to create new markets, industry innovation, infrastructure, reduced inequalities, decent work and economic growth. And we think about the environment, that's pretty obvious in climate action, life below water and on land, and clean water and sanitation. So it goes on. And then sustainable cities, obviously, and communities. So just push it on, because I've got loads to do and not much time to do it. This is the waste hierarchy. And I'm going to skip through this. This is something we use this side of the water, and something you may see your side. It's a hierarchy with the most sustainable option at the top and the least sustainable option at the bottom for what we're going to do with waste we generate. What would you say is the most sustainable option there? Just stick in the chat what you think, what the most sustainable option might be in that hierarchy. Have a go. Great prizes for getting it right, and no problem getting it wrong. Yeah, bang on, Anna. Prevention. Thank you for that. So prevention. Prevent something becoming a waste in the first place. You've completely eliminated the problem. So, for instance, if you can speak with your material suppliers and get them to design out elements of the packaging that are not needed, or redesign that packaging in such a way that less is used, you will have less packaging to put in your dumpsters. You'll have less packaging to take off the materials that you're going to use, and you'll have less packaging to dispose of by recycling, incineration, or any other means. If you can't do that, then can you have reusable packaging? So reuse comes in as well, because this is what the hierarchy looks like. So working through, you can't prevent it. Can you prepare it for reuse? can you use something for its intended purpose? You bought a load of bricks. You don't need as many of the bricks as you bought, because you bought too many bricks so that you meet your program without running out of bricks. Can those bricks go to a different purpose? It might be a construction skills college. It might be a community project. Wherever it goes, it's better that they're used as bricks than going in a dumpster or being crushed down for recycling. But if you have to crush them down for recycling, make sure you plan for that and build that in. Then after that comes other recovery, which is incineration, really, or pyrolysis. And after that comes disposal, which is landfill sites. So we want to be staying in the top half of that system. And if we do that, we will have a lower whole life carbon, we'll have a more circular economy. And if we don't do that, we'll have a linear economy with higher whole life carbon. And there are benefits, because if we can reduce, it'll go well. But it'll give a sustainability markets advantage where such an advantage counts. It'll help comply with client requirements, and where mandated by an organisation, you kind of tick that box. But it can be a challenge, because some of the barriers can be, it takes a bit of sorting out. Somebody's got to do that work. Somebody's got to change the way in which you do work. Not everybody likes to make those changes, and there might be too much resource to work with. So you just kind of get overfaced by it. But the point about circularity is to start having a go, start trying it, and see. Just pick battles you can win would be my advice. So just on the business case, just wanted to put this one up. And what we're going to say here is that in terms of, we call it skip hire, you would call it dumpster. So a dumpster, let's say an 8-9 yard dumpster, quite a large one containing standard waste, not hazardous. Let's put a figure on that to have that dropped down and taken away. You fill it up as volunteers, of course, $300. Let's say $300, about that kind of value. Might be a bit more, might be a bit less. There are a whole set of materials that are going to go into that dumpster that are going to, or a whole set of costs that are going to go into filling up that dumpster that are avoidable costs to a degree, but they're hidden, they're not seen. And I want to show you what some of those are now. So just look at this. The process of waste management itself. Once you create a waste to manage, you've created a task you have to do in your business that you wouldn't otherwise have to do, or you would have to do less of if you had less waste to manage. The whole issue of storage for waste, often on sites where it's tricky, that can be a challenge as well. Are materials getting damaged before they even get used? This happens a lot, and links to inadequate storage quite often, and bad logistics planning. Is the same waste going into the dumpster all the time? That's design-driven waste. That's another area which we need to think about. Are you having wasted energy from doing this? Of course, because fuel's being used, and physical energy is being used by people doing that rather than doing something else. The whole process around the labour. We fill up dumpsters as volunteers. That's the way it works. So can we have less of them? And can it be more structured? And can we be more circular? So this is just a diagram I've put in which shows from the client and design influence through to the delivery of products and through to the site management and practices, some of the things that you can do and some of the ways in which you can avoid creating those wastes in the first place. So, or some of the things that will actually create it that you can then develop processes to get away from. But a lot is to do with people. So on the client, I'll just pick a few out. Design, these clients and designer change of mind on the left-hand side. Poor communication is the death of circularity. So if we don't know what's going on, we are more likely to waste. Specification failing to match the quality required. Somebody hasn't listened to what the spec was supposed to be, so you have to strip out and go back in again. Resistance to adopt alternative materials. There are some fantastic new building materials out there that are starting to be used, and you will have manufacturers and suppliers in the States who are producing these. It's not about going in with both feet and trying it all at once, but it's about trialing these things to make them work. On the delivery of products, can we overorder a bit less? Can we just trim that down? Can we think about packaging? Can we think about how we transport? And can we really have, look at the performance of the materials that we're using? And when it comes to site management and practice, I an untidy site is usually a wasteful site. So the tidier, the better. Can we think about laying out for recycling properly? Can we think about design in such a way that we don't have all that cutting and fixing and use of bonding and glues and so on? Can we have dry lining that's the right size rather than cutting that same slice off it or that same slice of glass every time? Can we think it through? Loads to go out there. And of course, we've got to think about these things, our brand and reputation, critical and ever more now. What is going on in the world, it's a cause for worry. We need to think about the availability of stock and raw materials. Look at the dash for rare earths and at the moment and what's going on there. Far better to be preserving our own materials in the first place and finding ways to reuse them wherever possible and using as few as possible. And then when we need those materials, we value them and we look after them and we endlessly recycle them. So I just produced this just to show that, I keep harking back to the UK. We're not that great, believe me. This is a report from Tarmac. This talks about aggregates. So only 20%, 28% of the aggregates used in the UK come from recycled and secondary sources. In other words, stuff that's been recycled or gathered from previous construction. That's incredible, really. So 72% is still coming straight out of the ground, being quarried. We need to turn that around because as well as being, the environmental impacts, remember about preserving nature, it's also that impact in terms of transportation or the nuisance or the dust, everything else that goes with it. We don't need to do that. So this is just one on plastics, and what I wanted to show, but I haven't really quite got the time for it, so I'll skip through, is that if we think about packaging, just over 25% of the total volume of plastics that's created in the world is turned into packaging. So just about 1 in 4 tons of plastic that's created goes into packaging, but over 60% of plastic waste comes from packaging. And that tells us that we do not value our plastic packaging. And when we think about microplastics and the impact of those, a lot of that is coming from our packaging. So when we start thinking about future health and the health of our children, it's another area to think about, let alone the fact that we're using all that oil in terms of packaging. And it'll most likely just be incinerated rather than recycled. So we need to turn that around. We produced a report on packaging in the house building sector. So you might not be involved in the house building sector, but very likely not. But the examples are the same. This work with 4 of the UK's top 10 house builders and has all sorts of examples of how to eliminate or optimize packaging, and talks about the packaging around bricks and blocks and doors, windows, kitchens, consumables, appliances, whatever it happens to be, dry lining. They're transferable examples in most cases, and it's all available. So kind of rounding up a little bit, circular economy addresses a design problem, not a waste problem, really. We start with design. If we design well, we will be more circular. And this is something from our partners at Zero Waste Scotland. They say focusing on materials resource efficiency, so less material is used in the design, you have a lean design, less waste is produced in the construction process, but you are not going to compromise what you design. That is going to be paramount. You're going to give something to the client that's going to make them very happy indeed. Just a few examples here I thought I'd share with you. Here's a nice one. So this is, the NYC, like Urban Development Corporation, looking at building a circle in New York City and starting to think about how they can do about this. And they've introduced guidelines for capital projects, and it's starting to kick in now. And as one of the projects that they're looking at, so Spark Kips Bay, reducing, over 25,000 tons of carbon emissions, which is the equivalent of nearly taking 6,000 cars off the road, which, if ever a city needed 6,000 cars taken off the road, it's New York City. So, just put that one in there. And, an exemplar for others. So all of this is quite early stage, but starting to happen. It's great to see. And then this is from a totally different organisation. This is a flooring manufacturer called Tarkett, who are a global manufacturer. They're based in Sweden, but they're the biggest in the world on vinyl flooring, for example. So vinyl flooring goes into a lot of different locations. And they use the cradle to cradle system that I mentioned earlier. Strong focus. And they started, so there's their cradle to cradle work. And you can see what's going in there. So circularity, water stewardship, renewable energy, material health, and all the scores. And they started to develop circular products where they're getting closed loop circularity, where they're actually drawing in old material that's gone beyond its effective life and recycling that back into new materials. And guess what? There's a demand for these. People actually want to have them now. Clients actually want to have that look, so that instead of showing that, bit of, I don't know, that rare Chinese hardwood or whatever that they've got in the boardroom, they've actually got something that's repurposed and there's a story behind it. Fantastic. It's great for the kind of all the targets like BREEAM and LEED, well building, and so on and so forth. And then this one's an interesting one. So this is School Partners. So we've got Floor here, and it was designing in the Netherlands a facility for converting plastic waste, which I mentioned, which would otherwise go for landfill or incineration, into oils, wax, and gas. So you're looking at a really interesting process model, and it reduces the emissions associated with the disposal of plastic waste and the production of new plastics from fossil-derived petrochem. So, a real nice example there, I think, from Floor, an engineering-based example. So showing that our School Partners, and there'll be many of you in the same boat, can be part of the solution. You're part of delivering the solution as well. So I'll leave this with you. And all it is really is just that you can maybe print this one off afterwards and take a look and think about what you're doing in your own business. Is there anything you can kind of start from, or ideas that you've thought, or that you or colleagues have thought about, or that have been tried that haven't quite worked, and have a think about what it would take to kick it over the line, to actually get it to the point where you can make that work. Wouldn't that be great if you can make those work? So you can use that afterwards as kind of a little bit of a group exercise. And just in terms of where it's all going, well, don't forget the waste hierarchy, because it's a great place to go. And it says there, actually, I've made a mistake, that you're legally obliged. I'm not sure you are, but it's still, I would suggest it's a great obligation to try and focus on the waste hierarchy. This is a document from Ellen MacArthur, which is Circular Business Models in the Built Environment, and one I'd recommend you to look up, because it contains some of those ideas about different business ideas, ways you can do things. Like the idea about moving from a product-based offer to a service-based offer. Some great ideas in there. Focus on logistics, focus on selling and reselling, focus on reuse, etc. So that's me done. The voice has just about made it, so thank you for bearing with me. I had a minor croak in the middle, but we got there. Thanks for you joining in with the group work. It's much appreciated. I hope it's been okay for you. And if you think you've got your own examples that you can bring forward for future webinars, we would be absolutely, wouldn't we, Wendy, delighted to build those in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just wanted to, well, first of all, thank you, Mark, for a great session. It's always great to hear about this. I know the circular economy and resource management, waste in general, is a topic that is growing in, I don't want to say concern, but prevalent at the moment. So yeah, it's always great to hear from different examples, what's happening in the world. So thank you very much. If anyone does have any questions, do feel free to pop it in the chat. I'm happy to keep the webinar open for a few more moments. I do know that we're coming up on the top of the hour, but if you do have any questions that you think of after the fact, please do reach out. We'll be sure to answer them. Otherwise, if there are no other questions, I think we will leave it there. I'm just going to check. Thank you again for spending part of your morning with us. Do keep an eye out for an email from myself with the links to the recording, the survey, and the slides. And hope to see you at the next session. So thank you very much.
Thanks all. Have a good day.